to another episode of Pedagogy in Practice. In this episode, I am interviewing Dr. Sara Manuel from Psychology, and she is going to be talking to you today about her creative use of Mentimeter to engage her students in a risk-free way right from the start of her semester in her class. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it.
Hey, Sarah. Thanks for joining me today. I'm excited to talk to you about Mentimeter.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to talk to you about what I use a Mentimeter for in my classrooms.
Awesome. Well, I guess with that said, let's go ahead and dive right into it. So if you would you be willing to explain a little bit about Mentimeter and then also how you use it in your class?
Sure. So for anyone that hasn't heard of Mentimeter before, it's sort of similar to PowerPoint where you can create slides you can display on your classroom board or your projector screen. You can even share it in your online classroom if you're going to share your screen with your students virtually. And it's more interactive than PowerPoint. So you can use it in a similar way as PowerPoint to display information, but you can also use it to interact with your students by asking them questions, and they can respond to those questions through Mentimeter, either on the computers or on their phones, whatever your classroom has. And they can answer questions, they can contribute to whatever's going on in the classroom, and it's really fun to get your students engaged in your course material.
Oh, that's awesome. And if you don't mind, I'll ask kind of a follow-up question about that. Do they, so does it work with, do you know if it works with iOS and Android devices and tablets by any chance?
Yes. So for mobile devices, it'll work with any device that has a web browser capability. Because one option for what they can do is go to the website. So it's mentimeter.com. And for every Mentimeter presentation that you create, you'll get a code that's unique to that presentation. And so once students go to the website, they'll be asked to enter the code that you provide them. Another way that I like to do it in the classrooms where my students always have their phones out and about is to provide them with a QR code. And I can put that QR code up on the screen, and once they scan it with their phones, then it opens right up to the presentation and bypasses needing that numerical code for them to enter into the website. But it'll work either way. So I teach in a classroom that has computers, and so some of my students already have a web browser up open on the computer, so they prefer to go to the website and type in the code there. In other classrooms, maybe I don't have that, but I know that my students, at least most of them, have their phones on them, and so they'll open up their camera app and scan the QR code and open it up on the phone.
Oh, it sounds like I'm happy that the tool is so accessible across a wider range of devices. That's awesome. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive a little bit now into how you personally use it in your classroom. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I use it to have my students interact with the course material and kind of let me know a little bit about what's going on. Would you mind if I showed some examples of how I use it in class?
By all means, go for it. Yeah, please.
Okay. All right. So I will go ahead and share my screen. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay. So one way that I like to use this is on the very first day of class to check in with students about how they're feeling. And I teach statistics, and sometimes students are feeling, maybe not all that confident about taking statistics. For some of my students, this might be their very first math class since high school, or they might have put off taking this class, and this might be their last class they need to graduate. And so they're sometimes, not feeling as confident as I would want them to be, but I want to check in with that. And so what I use this for on the first day of class is I put this up on the board, and it's a word cloud. And I ask them in one word, how are you feeling about taking statistics? And they can enter in when they have it on their phones or on the computers, there's little word blanks for them to enter in a word. And then as they're doing that, this shows up live on the screen. And the bigger the word, the more people gave that response. And so we can see here that the biggest word is nervous. And this is the biggest word every semester that I've been doing this for my statistics class. And the point that I'm trying to drive at here with the students is that if they are feeling nervous, they're not the only one, right? If they're feeling nervous, they're not the only one here. There are other people in the class who feel the same way that they do. And some of the other words here, we have overwhelmed or scared or intimidated, which are sort of synonyms for nervous. And so I want them to know that they're not the only one feeling that way. But it is also kind of, nice to see that there are students who are feeling confident and excited, right? And those are, not the biggest word, but they're bigger than some of the words on here. And so it's just nice to get a sense of how my students are feeling and try to manage those emotions on the first day of class and let them know that they're not alone.
Oh, that is very impressive. And I think it's well, I guess before I say that, let me just add a couple other questions in. So first, is it, when the students submit, is it an anonymous submission when they put in what they want to say?
Yes. Thank you so much for that follow-up question. It is anonymous. And so nobody knows what they're saying. And I like that too, because that way students don't have to feel singled out. They don't have to feel like they're the only one saying that they're nervous. It's anonymous. Nobody knows what they say. And I let them know that it's anonymous. And another way I like to use this, just kind of springboarding off the anonymity part of it, is that I like to ask students on the second day of class what questions they have. Because on the first day of class, we go over the syllabus and I always ask if there are questions, and then I don't get a lot. And then on the second day, I want to check back in with them and I'll kind of ask, all right, in the last couple of days, what questions have come up and what do you want to ask? And I don't want students to feel like they're asking a dumb question, right? And I always tell them there's no such thing as a dumb question. I want you to feel comfortable asking, but I know for some students, they're not going to be. And so this is anonymous. They can ask their questions without feeling like they're the only one who could possibly have this question. And I'll go through a few examples that I have from my second day of class this semester. Second day of class, I'll ask students, what questions do you have about the class? So these are follow-up questions to the first day of class, where maybe they're feeling a bit overwhelmed with all the information and they weren't sure what to ask that day. So I want them to be able to ask questions the second day so that there's, clarification on those questions. And I do this in the anonymous format of a Q&A through Mentimeter so that they can ask their questions without feeling like they're being singled out. And so here's an example of a question that a student asked on the first day. They asked, can we use our personal computers instead of the classroom ones? So one of the classrooms I teach in is a computer lab. And this student seemed to want to be able to use their own personal laptop or tablet instead of those classroom computers. And the answer is yes, right? They're allowed to do that. They can use whatever device they're most comfortable with. And then I explained that for some classroom activities, we might need to use those computers in the lab. But for the most part, if they want to take notes on their own laptop, that is fine. And so this is an example of a question that a student had that second day of class to kind of check in. And something that is also fun is they can like each other's questions. And so this one got a like, indicating that there was probably another student who had the same question.
I love that. I was going to say, I think one really nice benefit of both things that you do with the word cloud in this is that, like you were saying, I think it makes the class approachable in a way, and probably also you as an instructor, I would imagine, where it's like, it takes it from the student feeling like they're in silos and realize, and helps them, become part of a community, right? And then by asking these questions, because we know that oftentimes there's people that are intimidated or scared or don't feel comfortable asking a question, but it's a question that a lot of people probably share. So this is a great way to bring that to the forefront and make it more community-based.
Right. And one of the interesting things I get with the second day question is sometimes they're based on the class, right? Like, do we need to take notes every day? And then we talk about why you should consider taking notes in class, what notes are for, how to best take notes, right? So we're not just talking about the course here, but maybe things that can extend out to their other classes, nice. Right? So why would we take notes when we come to class, right? So we can use that to talk about this. Something else that I saw this semester was students were asking not just about my class or classes in general, but BC things. This student asked if getting a student ID is free. So this wasn't a question that was specific to me as their statistics professor to be able to answer, but a question that the student had generally about being a BC student was, could they get a student ID card for free? And the answer, of course, is yes. And then we talked about going to the Student Life Center and getting their photo taken for their picture, and other students chimed in about their experience doing that. And then other students chimed in and said, oh, I still need to do that. And so then we had a nice little conversation about just being a student at BC.
Interesting. It makes me think that, one, it's great because now they're learning something that they will carry with them to other classes with other instructors. And it makes me also wonder, just like if we were to do like a survey of, these introduction sessions with students at the beginning of a semester, what types of these questions would filter to the top that, maybe is something that we can help address in different ways,
Yeah. So I like this, it helps demystify the class a bit, being a student in general and being a student at BC. I think it's a good second day activity before you get all into your content, just to kind of check in with your students.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing those specific examples. Okay, so I guess my next question is I love this. I love how you're using it and how you're employing Mentimeter in your class. Where did the idea come from? What made you decide that you wanted to start using Mentimeter?
I heard about Mentimeter pre-pandemic. It was something that I had been aware of as the way that you could kind of poll your students, ask questions in real time. And so I was curious about it, but I hadn't really used it until we got back from the pandemic. And I was trying to think of ways to check in with my students, and also thinking back to how I felt as a student. And I wasn't a student that wanted to raise my hand in class and ask a question, or say how I was feeling. Right. Which is funny now, because now it's my job to stand up in front of the classroom and talk, but I would have never wanted to do that as a student. And so I keep my feelings as a student in mind when creating things for my classes. And so I thought this was a good solution for those students who are apprehensive to raise their hands in class, but also the ones that aren't, they get to participate too. So this kind of equals sort of the playing field for all of the students. Everyone can participate, and I think feel comfortable doing it.
Excellent. I know that most of what we'll be looking at today is sort of how you use it to sort of demystify the class, as you stated, but it also looks like it would be a great tool for formative assessments as the semester continues.
In what way?
Well, to be able to ask students, be able to sort of conduct polls or ask questions to the students about what they're learning throughout the semester, and then sort of get a sense of what parts they're understanding well and what parts they're not. So then as an instructor, you would be able to address those in a timely fashion.
Yes, and I have used that. I do have a couple examples of that too, if I could share those.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Okay, so these are kind of examples of how I might check in with students. So last semester, I taught a hybrid statistics class in which students were supposed to watch the online videos before they came to class, and then we used class time to work on practice problems. And so I did like a flipped classroom, and then during the first week of class, when I was still trying to get students used to this idea that they had to come prepared by watching the videos first, and that class was going to be practice-based, not lecture-based, which was difficult to kind of get them to adjust to. I asked them to be honest, how far did you get in watching the lecture videos for today? And I had options here of I didn't watch any videos. I watched some, I watched all, and there were 2 chapters they were supposed to watch for. So I watched all of one, some of the second one, and then I watched all of, all the videos they were supposed to watch. And I can see here that one student indicated they watched all the videos they were supposed to. There was a good handful that watched some to some extent, and a good amount that honestly said they watched none, but they get to answer this anonymously. And so they don't have to feel intimidated by telling me I didn't watch any of the stuff I was supposed to today. And while I don't love seeing that number, 10 students didn't watch anything, it allowed me to adjust the way I approached that content for the day. And then also allowed me to remind them, you are supposed to be watching these videos before you come to class. Yes, we're still in the first week and I know you're getting used to it, but I want to see that I didn't watch any videos number go down, right? I want you to come to class prepared. And so I could adjust my content, and I could also be aware of how prepared my students were for class that day. And so it's a nice way to check in with them, again, anonymously, and get a good assessment of where your students are for that class day.
And I think you bring up, the anonymity in it. I think that's an important thing to note, just because now students feel that it's safe to give you honest feedback about these things, where they don't feel like, they're going to be judged by you, or their grade is going to be impacted by answering these questions, honestly. So I think that's very important to note.
Yeah. It's not like I knew who those 10 people were. And so they were safe to tell me that in this environment.
Nice. I think that's excellent. I love that, how you get feedback that way, and then also adjust, based on these answers, sort of how you're going to conduct the content for that day. Which also makes me think about, okay, so you use it in a bunch of different ways that you've shown us so far. What sort of prep work is required in order to get Mentimeter set up to use? Like, how much time do you spend doing it? What's required of you?
It's actually very little prep time once you know what you're going to be asking. So I'll bring up a blank presentation that I have here. And so this is what it looks like when you create a new presentation. It's just blank, and it's called slides. So you can create a new slide. Oops.
Well, I guess we're creating a new slide.
There we go. Okay. A new slide, just like PowerPoint, right? So it uses the kind of language that we're familiar with if you use PowerPoint. And then you have options of what kinds of slides you can have. So it already has these set up for you. You don't have to code anything. You don't have to spend a lot of time with the creativity part. If I want to do a word cloud question, like how are you feeling about taking this class? All I need to do is click the word cloud option. It kind of tells me what it is. I'll go back. It gives me an example up on the screen right here, so I can see kind of what it is. And then once I say, okay, I think I'll do this one.
So all those words that were up on the screen in the example of the word cloud, I assume those are exactly what you're feeling about this interview with me, right? Fun, innovative, creative,
Yes, of course. Yes. Yeah. And then, so up here is where I can change my question. Now I can't actually click there, but over here on the right-hand side is where I would enter my question. So how are you feeling today? And then it auto populates up on the slide here. And then I can change how many options I want students to have. If I just want them to say one thing, I can change this down to one. Or if I say, you know what, if you want to just give me one, but if you want to offer 3 words, you can do up to 3. And it'll show that 3 spaces on their screen for them to enter answers. So you can control how many answers they get. You can allow them to submit multiple times if you want to. And then here are some other options too. You can do things like show your QR code right on the screen right here, so that if you have it up on the screen, students can just scan it with their phone. You can kind of change how your slide looks a little bit. You can also customize the theme of your slide. And I like to use the dark one. I don't know why, but I just like the way it looks. But you have options for how your slide will look. And this is how mine tend to.
Nice.
And so that's kind of it for the prep work.
Okay, so you just got to spend time building out the slide itself, and then sort of determining your settings based on what sort of thing you're asking of them, right? Because I'm sure there's some that you don't mind if they do submit multiple submissions, but then there's others that, might skew the data in ways that you don't necessarily want to see by allowing multiple submissions.
Right. Like for the word cloud, maybe sure, that's fine. If they have, more than one feeling. But if I'm asking them to, indicate how many videos they've watched, for example, I want just 1 vote per person so I can get an accurate count. Yes. And let's say, I started with the word cloud and I decided, you know what, I don't want this to be a word cloud anymore. I want this to be a multiple choice question. All I need to go here is to slide type, and then I can change it.
Oh, wow.
And so I can adjust it back. And now let's say I want it to be this multiple choice question. And I'm going to add answer options. So how are you feeling today? Well, one option could be happy, right? And then another one is sad. I don't know, right? You can just have your multiple options here. And then students can vote that way. So this is still really easy to set up, right? They can be excited. And when they see this, they'll see these options that they can vote on.
Oh, Awesome. So it looks like the tool itself is fairly robust. It has a lot of different features that you can do. It's pretty easy to switch from one type of content on a slide to another. Is this the free version of Mentimeter that you're using, or is there a cost associated with it?
I use the free version. There is a paid version, but with the free version, I feel like you get a good amount of functionality, and I haven't felt too limited. I have felt a little bit limited at times. One limitation is if I go back to themes, some of these themes have the word pro after them, and that means you need to pay for them. So there are, kind of a limited number of the free themes, and I think they're nice enough, but if you wanted a fancy theme, you might not be able to unless you're going to pay for it.
Got it.
That's kind of an aesthetic thing. One other thing is you get a limited number of the types of slides you can use. So if I add, so I have currently a multiple choice slide and a word cloud slide. And if I go to add a new one, it's then asking that I upgrade from the basic or upgrade to a plan that I have to pay for. And I can't add any of these question types that are grayed out, but I
So it
still
limits
can
you to
add
about 2
other
to 3
ones.
slides per session, or more than that?
Sort of. You
Okay.
get 2 to 3 slides of these types that are multiple choice or word cloud or, ranking. You get a limited number of those, but you can still add as many Q&A slides as you want. So even though I can't add another multiple choice slide, it's not letting me, I can add a Q&A slide. So I get an extra slide there. If I go back to add slide, I can add some content slides. So maybe I just want to show an image, or I want to have instructions up on the screen. I can add this too. And so even though it says I can't add any more of the more interactive slides, I can still add some slides. So you kind of have to play around and see what you can add once it says you've reached the maximum, because it's not necessarily that you can't add anything else.
Got it. Okay. So then it just is a matter of sort of, as the faculty, when you think about how you're going to use it, just strategizing where you want to use those really interactive ones and what for, but yet you can still build out a pretty robust presentation this way.
Yes. And just like PowerPoint, you can rearrange the slides. So maybe instructions should go at the beginning. I can just drag and move those up, right?
Okay.
And when you present it, it's similar to PowerPoint, where you go to your present button and then it'll load for a second. And it looks like this on your screen or the screen that you are presenting on. So this is how it shows in the classroom for me.
Okay, excellent.
And then students can scan the QR code, or they can go to the website and enter in the code that's on the screen.
That is incredible. That's a very cool tool. I love the way you're using it, Sarah.
Thank you.
It makes me think I need to adopt this into my own practice,
It's fun. Another way I've used it is to just check in with students, because how sometimes you have those class days where it's like, we could spend some time working on homework, or we could move on to the next topic, right? You're not quite sure what to do. And sometimes when that happens in the past, I've done like a show of hands. What would you want to do? But again, I was never that student that wanted to raise my hand. And I also worry about, them seeing more people raise their hand for something that maybe they don't want, and feeling like they have to fit in, and they don't want to be the one person that's like, I don't want to do that. So I've done it as an anonymous poll that way too. So in this class day, we had the option where we could work on homework, or we could begin the next chapter. And I asked them, what do you want to do? And you can see that most students actually wanted to move on to the next chapter and not work on homework that day. And I was like, okay, and so this was another way to check in with my students and, let them guide what we were going to do with our class time, because it's their class time.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that it's giving students an option, a choice in the middle of a session,
Right. Yeah. And I didn't actually set this one up in advance. I have a 2-hour class, so I give them a small break halfway through. And then I realized, okay, with our second half of class, we can either work on homework or we can go on to the next chapter. And so I set this up right during our break in class, and it took me, a minute to just type in, would you rather, give the two options right there, and then put it up on the screen. It didn't take me very long, and I did it, during a short break in class. And so
awesome. Well, it
this
seems
can
like
also be something that you do on the fly.
Okay. That sounds awesome. I'm happy that it's such an easy tool to use that you can implement it in those quick little moments. Which I guess, as I'm looking at this and I see that, you're getting good student feedback here from within class. What have you received feedback from your students about your use of Mentimeter in your class?
I haven't received direct feedback from them. I haven't asked them directly, but I think they like it because one of the other ways I use this is for exam reviews. I do the Q&A slide for exam reviews, and I get a lot of questions through the Mentimeter, more so than I get when I just stand there in front of the classroom and say, what questions do you have about the exam? Right. When I do that, I get like a few, and I'm like, so you're all prepared? And then nobody says anything. And I'm like, okay. But they really use the Q&A Mentimeter slide when we're reviewing for exams. And I get some questions that are kind of basic, like how many questions will there be on the exam? But I also get them asking questions like, can we go over how to do this and that together on the board? And so I think they like it, but I haven't actually asked them for direct feedback on it.
Okay. So, so it is potential that, faculty could then, if they decide to use Mentimeter, they could do some anonymous Canvas surveys in their class to get feedback about the class, and then put in a question about it. What did you like the use of Mentimeter? Or they could get specific about those types of things.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. You could
so
even use Mentimeter to ask them feedback about Mentimeter.
Getting meta with Menta. I guess, okay, so then I guess that actually leads to the last question I have for you, Sarah, which is, if other faculty wanted to implement this in their course, what sort of advice do you have for them?
I think just try it out, play around with it, see what you think you could use in your class. So, the types of examples that I went through, maybe they work for your class, but maybe some of these other options here are better for your class. Maybe you want to do some ranking, maybe you want to do some scale, some other options here. So play around with it, see how it fits with your class. I use it as a tool to supplement what's going on in my classroom. I don't use it to present my main information. It's kind of like a little activity that we do. So I don't try to put my whole PowerPoint into Mentimeter. It's like a separate thing that I'll say, okay, grab your phones or open up the web browser on the computer and let's kind of answer this question or, engage in this word cloud just to kind of check in. And so I like to think of it as a supplemental activity to what's going on in the classroom.
Got it. Okay. I think that sounds like an excellent use. And of course, to people watching this video, if this looks like a tool that you want to implement in your class, feel free to reach out to Academic Technology because we would be happy to help you learn how to use this tool in your class. And so, Sarah, thank you for your time today. Thank you for being willing to share your experience and cover everything you did. I really hope that it'll be a benefit. I feel certain it will be to those that watch it. But thank you, Sarah, for being here with us today.
You are very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
All right. See you around campus.
All right, bye.
And that's all I have for you today with this episode of Pedagogy in Practice. So I hope you learned a lot from Sarah. And as always, if you have any questions about how to implement Mentimeter in your own class, feel free to reach out to me or Alex. We would be happy to help you. And with that, we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.